Hey, it's December 7th, 2017. It's me, Steve. And I told a bunch of people I was going to do this, so I'm going to do this. The Science Channel has its own YouTube channel. And what they like to do is they like to put little clips from different shows and, guess kind of tease you, whatnot. But anyway, yesterday, and you'll see it later, the exact episode and everything, they did a little blurb, took a little excerpt, less than 3 minutes, 2 minutes 57 seconds, from their show called What on Earth. Now, I've never actually watched this show, and after this clip, I am never going to. There was so much wrong with it. And I know the Science Channel, I know they need to keep your interest or whatever, but if you're going to have science in your name, you might want to do some reference checking or something like that first before you just go out there and spout stuff. Now, I'm going to show you, when I'm done rambling here, I'm going to show you clips from this 2 minute 57 second video. And then I'm going to critique and verbally tell you what's wrong, and then I'm going to give you a presentation at the very end, explaining in detail what's wrong, because some of us just can't let that kind of stuff go. But anyway, that's it for the intro. Sit back, and I hope you get something out of this.
In the 1860s, there was a zoologist by the name of Philip Sclater who proposed that there was a landmass that stretched from Madagascar all the way to India.
Sclater suggested that such a landmass could explain an apparent discrepancy in the evolutionary tree of species found in Africa and India.
His reasoning for thinking this is that you can find lemurs in Madagascar and you can find lemurs in India, but not in Africa. And
Okay, now, from what you just saw, everything from what I can tell in my looking online is true, all right? Up to this point. I'm not going to address why Sclater thought this stuff, and he actually was a pretty good zoologist, but this whole concept of land bridges was before we knew anything about plate tectonics and how continents moved. I believe where they're getting this from is from his 1864 short essay called The Mammals of Madagascar. I have been unable to find this online in its full form, but later you're going to see from other sources I've taken stuff directly from it, and they will be sourced as well. I'm going to source everything in my video, unlike these guys. All right?
Sclater names the lost landmass Lemuria. Several other Victorian academics suggest that Lemuria could even hold the key to one of the greatest mysteries of human evolution.
some scholars suggest that this lost landmass is where we originated from, mankind. This is where we came down from the trees, which is now what we call the missing link.
Maybe all the evidence we need is on Lemuria, and it's this land bridge, and it's now buried underwater.
The missing link in human evolution may just have been found from space. Then, on the island of Mauritius, comes another clue.
Okay, I also did do some research to see if the people interviewed in here, since they don't put their names or what they do for a living on the screen like most people do in documentaries, at least not in this segment. Most of them are legitimate scientists. Now, this guy here, talking about the missing link, I'm going to get into why nobody uses that phrase anymore, not any actual real scientists. But this part right here gave me problems. You got to remember, in the 19th century, 1864, Darwin's hypothesis at the time of evolution had already come out, and we'd even found Archaeopteryx by that point. But we still had a very incomplete picture of human evolution. So there was this concept of a missing link, all right, between ape and man. Well, now we know that entire term doesn't mean anything, and I'm going to address it in the presentation in more detail later. So this is where I started to just like do this, all right? So, but there's more.
What they found in those samples were zircons.
Zircon crystals are minerals created when continents first formed during the Earth's turbulent geological past.
The fact that you find zircon crystals on this young island suggests that there must be some kind of continental crust that's beneath the island.
Geologists now believe that the lost continent detected by the NASA satellites was once part of an ancient supercontinent. 180 million years ago, the giant landmass began to break up, creating Africa, South America, Australia, and Antarctica. Apocalyptic tectonic forces pull the lost continent apart and submerge it beneath the waves.
Okay, now you just saw they talked about zircons, and it looks like they have more of interview parts with these people, but cut them out and then stuck their obviously unresearched conclusions in between. But I'm going to address that in great detail, because that has to do with geology, in the presentation section later. And there are buzzwords here like lost continent and apocalyptic and all that. These things are talking about, and I believe I found the paper where this part of the episode is based off of. It's a 2013 paper. I'm going to show you that as well. Well, I'm not going to show you the actual paper. I will let you know what it is, because I actually had to pay for it, and I'm not going to put online the entire thing. And it's actually really short. It's like 5 pages. But these type of broken off microcontinents have been known for a while. This isn't new stuff. We've known this, all right? But it just seems like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of ginning of stuff here to get you like ooh and ah, but they're really misrepresenting information here. We don't exactly understand the mechanisms of leaving these microcontinents behind, but apparently it does happen. So I am going to show you what is a possible model at the end here. But I just wanted to say, in addition to this too, is there's still a lot we don't know about plate tectonics. At least they did show the breakup of Golgonda properly, but they just dropped dates. Now, that's a problem. He said 180 million years. But earlier they talk about human evolution. 180 million years ago, mammals were like this big at biggest, and they were basically rodents. Right? So, but you're going to see that that the gravity map that they showed, that area, I am going to talk about how that island, not how that island formed, but when it did. And you're going to see that it has nothing to do with human evolution at all. It predates the earliest hominids by like a lot. And I like how at the end there they sit there and say, we can only speculate. Yeah, you guys do a lot of that in this video. Matter of fact, you do way too much. Making erroneous correlations that sound scientific, but you guys didn't do your research, man. It's just that plain and simple. You just didn't. All right, so here we go. This first slide are screenshots from my phone where I originally watched this video yesterday. Here's the information on it. If you want to go watch it, go right ahead and do it. That's fine. All right. Now, Philip Lutley Sclater, all right? He was a lawyer and a zoologist. And what I think the publication they're talking about, this is it. You can read this if you want. This is a direct quote from it. But that was taken from Scientific American because, like I said before, I couldn't find the actual publication. But it's important to note something. These land bridges, he wasn't the first to postulate these. Below is a French geologist who was the first to, near the bottom, is first to postulate it. And the thing about these land bridges is there's something you got to remember. They didn't know about plate tectonics, all right? And that's key. So they needed an explanation to explain this, and these land bridges are what they came up with, all right? It's what they had at the time, okay? Here's the unknowns to Sclater and other 19th century naturalists. Continental drift wouldn't come about until 1912. And when it first came out, it was not very well received, all right? It wasn't until we started mapping the ocean floor. Now, up until we started mapping the ocean floor, most people assumed it was featureless and flat. Even Wegener did. And he thought the continents just plowed across the ocean floor, but didn't postulate any sort of mechanism that could do this, and that was where he greatly failed. His paper is also very short. And plate tectonics, the theory wouldn't get developed until circa 1967. It took a couple decades to do it. And the reason why I picked that year, as you're going to see here later. And also radioactive decay, radiometric dating wasn't a thing at the time. All right. And although radioactivity was discovered in the late 19th century, this is all still way after Sclater. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about zircons. All right. In that video, it makes it sound like zircons only formed in old rocks. That is totally untrue. And I'm going to demonstrate this for you. But here, I just wanted to show you basically what a zircon is, and we do uranium-lead dating from them. And usually we're working with very small crystals, as you can see from this photo I put. That's that Greek letter in the M, that's micrometers. So we're talking about 100 micrometers here. All right. So we're working with very small crystals. All right. Zircons, like most minerals, it forms from the cooling of magma. Okay. All magmatic bodies contain zircons once they cool. Actually, all rocks contain zircons, but like sedimentary rocks and highly metamorphosed rocks, you can't use them to date the rock. Not directly anyway, all right? And that's very important to remember. The accuracy of zircons is very good in the millions to billions of years. Now, this up here, the laser ablation inducivity coupled plasma mass spectrometry, or the acronym there. This technique, I guess, is used to date really young zircons, but there's huge margins of error, all right? And zircons aren't really good for dating really young things, but the Earth is still making zircons. It's making zircons right now. Any magma body that is cooling has zircons forming in it, all right? Now, granted, they're only bits and pieces, and coarser rocks tend to have larger crystals, which makes dating easier, all right? So this whole thing about zircons being in really old rock only is basically the point of this was tell you it's a load of horse shit. All right. So here's a hypothetical cross section I'm going to do to illustrate this. Here we have this is just a cross section. Doesn't matter the size, scale, or anything. We have pre-existing deposit zircon crystals within an older intrusion that has already solidified into rock. All right. Now you get this new magma coming up. That's this red. And that, as that magma comes up, and this is what they were trying to get at, but they didn't explain it very well in that video. All right. You'll get inclusions of the old host rock within the magma that's brought up with the magma. And that process will continue as the magma spills upon the surface. Now, that magma is going to cool, and it's going to contain these xenoliths with zircons in them of the old host rock, but they're also going to contain their own new zircons as well. Zircons are a mineral that forms in rocks, and not just really old rocks, okay? It's doing it right now, like I said before. All right, I'm having massive sound issues here, so I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I keep getting interrupted, the system keeps crashing, whatever, that's not your problem. All right, I'm going to talk about missing links, all right? This whole concept is very archaic, all right? It stems from the 19th century because, and it was specifically to talk about human evolution. We recognized chimpanzees looked a lot like human beings, so we made the assumption that humans evolved from apes. And that middle area was called the missing link. It was assumed that there would be some half ape-like, half man-like creature. But we didn't have genetics then. All right? We didn't have a lot of the things that we have now. And the term, it's garbage. I can't believe it really boggles my mind that they even mentioned it in this video. We have a huge, complete fossil record now. We really do. About as good as we could possibly hope for, and plus more. But the term missing link can apply to any missing lineage in a line. It doesn't matter what between organisms. Say you're alive, and one of your great grandparents is alive, but your grandparents and your parents are dead. and say there's no evidence of them. They're cremated or buried somewhere no one knows where they are. Technically, there's a missing link between your great-grandparents and you. But your parents and your grandparents existed. Okay? So you're not going to find every little tiny link from one organism to the next. Here's just a slide showing you how it's an archaic term. All right. Now, Wikipedia has a good list of hominid fossils, and here it is if you want to take a look at it. Evolution isn't always a march towards complexity. That's a misnomer. The simplest term. In simplest terms, I kind of screwed that slide up a little bit. It's basically the changing of organisms through time. And that's really simple as well. All right. You can't pick out exactly where one organism became another organism, if you will. And when I say that's poor wording. I should say you can't pick the exact moment when one species evolved into another species. That's probably a better way to put that. And our concept of evolution has changed over time, this linear progression, this march forward from simple to a little more complex to very complex. We know that doesn't happen. All right? But in the 19th century, they didn't know that. And we have things like phylogeny now, and phylogenetics. Here's a link to that if you want to take a look at it. All right? And on the bottom, I say every fossil lineage cannot be known, and the exact transition from one species to the next cannot be pinned down to any exact individual. All right. So what does Lemuria have to do with human evolution? In a nutshell, absolutely nothing. All right. Here's the paper that I believe they are referencing to. All right. And there's the date and everything. All right. The youngest rocks encountered, or the youngest ages, are 41 million years. All right. Hominid evolution only extends back about 6 million years. So I don't know where they're getting this link between hominid evolution and this Lemuria, which is a totally fictitious 19th century solution to fit a square peg in the round hole, as I've explained before, but it was the best they had at the time. Okay? There's just zero evidence. Now, maybe if that microcontinent was exposed to the surface for a very large amount of time, it may be important to primate evolution, but it has nothing to do with hominid evolution. All right. So this here is the Indian Ocean floor, National Geographic, 1967. You can actually order this about $20 online. They still make it. But why am I using this? Well, because I talked before about the development of plate tectonics, and that's why I picked the year 1967, because it's the first time this map appears of the ocean floor. And up until we had sonar and could map the ocean floor, everyone just kind of assumed it was a featureless surface. All right? But as you can see, it's not. These red lines here represent rifts where the continents are splitting apart. This dashed line is the microcontinent referred to in the paper and referred to in the video, the actual name of the microcontinent, without the stretched out over-exaggeration and conclusions that they jump to for no reason. But there are others. These black lines are just showing you other of these microcontinents. We've known about them for quite some time. Now, this map here shows you, this is just drawn. This is in the video about the same outline that they picked. And as you can see, this doesn't line up with anything. It's just something they put on a map to make you go, oh yeah, I wonder. But it doesn't, it's totally fabricated. All right, and it's just garbage, and I don't know why. I don't know really where they were going with that whole part. It just confuses me because there's so much mixing and mashing of information and erroneous conclusions and people taking people out of context and then interjecting something that has nothing to do with what they were talking about throughout that tiny 3-minute video. It was really weird. All right. And here, this map here tells you the source on top. This map shows you the age of the ocean floor. Now the oceans are younger than the continental crust because ocean plates get subducted and recycled. And the reds are very young ocean crusts, and the purples are the oldest known. But I just thought I'd show you that to give you a general sense of things. So how do microcontinents form? Honestly, we don't know. Okay. I have constructed this hypothetical cross-section, not to scale. All right, it's oversimplified, obviously. Continents aren't square blocks, we know this. But it illustrates my purpose. I also don't have a lot of other things on here, like I don't have the moho and the lithosphere, and I'm not showing convection cells within the mantle. The mantle is a solid, but magma is not. I'm not showing any subduction zones or anything like that. But even how I had it in my head while doing this was far more complex than this. But I think this might get the point across to you. So what happens is a continent begins to split. We get a rift. Okay? And then the two continents start moving away from each other as magma rises from the mantle to fill the rift and create new ocean crust. All right? And what might happen is as the continents are moving away from one another, subduction is happening somewhere else. And if there's a change in plate motion, this might cause a stretching effect, which would cause a thin oceanic crust, which might detach a continental fragment or a microcontinent. All right. Now our continents are still moving further apart, but now this microcontinent begins to subside because the ocean crust has thickened and aged and become more like the surrounding ocean crust, so it pulls it down a little bit. Now what's this going to do? This is going to put pressure on the mantle. And what might happen is you might get some melting. You might get volcanism, or you may not, as the sunken microcontinent puts pressure on the mantle. You may get melting and it may come up. But it doesn't have to. Like I've said before, we know of many of these microcontinents, and not all of them are volcanically active. So, well, what's going to happen to this microcontinent? Well, if it's not reaccreted during the closing phase of a Wilson cycle, it'll eventually just erode to basin level. And so you'll have a granitic part in the basaltic ocean crust. Well, what happens to it from there? Well, eventually it's probably going to get subducted back into the mantle. So these things probably aren't around a lot for a very long time. Any longer than ocean crust is, really. All right, so here's the supplementary information from that 2013 paper. This is available free online. You can download this PDF. Like I said, I'm not going to show you. The paper has the same title. I'm not going to put up the actual paper or put figures from it because I had to pay for it to get it. And in journals, closed source journals, that's how they make their money. All right. In open source journals, they put everything online for free because they make you pay to put your stuff to get your stuff reviewed. But in closed source, the reviewers need to get paid. All right, so I'm not going to step on anybody's toes with that. But basically, these are all the references that weren't mentioned in the video that I used in formulating this. All right, and if you pick anything out of this critique of this video, this 3-minute video that just made me rip my hair out, it's, if you're going to run a science channel and call it a science channel, have some actual science in it. I know you're trying to entertain and keep the audience's attention, but if you're going to say you're doing science, do science. Yeah, I know it's not as fun to sit there and watch somebody do a presentation like I did and cite a bunch of stuff and put a bunch of references in and put a bunch of words on screen, but you don't really need to have to do that. But you can't just sit there and jigsaw a bunch of stuff in that you heard one time and you think it's still scientifically relevant, but we haven't used it in 90 years because it's garbage. All right, so you got to be careful when you're watching these type of videos. All right, but anyway, that's it, and I hope you learned something or at least took something away from that.